So I had to oversee this entire yard, which it's a relatively small yard, fortunately, but I had to oversee the whole thing because it was, I don't even know if it was a combination of a little bit of rain and a ton of water. I mean, he had just had another company aerate and seed this yard, and then several weeks later I came back to mow it, and it was just like this area especially. You see the sun shines on this almost the entire day, and it's pretty dry here. There's still some dry areas you can see that didn't really take to the seed and watering, like down over there. Some pretty good dead areas still. But over here, because it's in the shade a lot more in the day, as you can see, it sneaks up on you. So I was coming through here to mow it, and you can see my footprints here. I was trying to feel where normally I get stuck, all down in here in the fence. This is all new grass. You can see all this new grass here. This was a huge tire rut. I just kind of like slid down in here and almost got pinned up against this fence, and I was able to just kind of keep working my way along here and kind of come up out that way, and just dug this whole section up with the tire. But you can't tell now because there's nothing but seed all in there. And then just trying to, you know, I actually continued back there and try to go down there, and you see some spots are dry, but around the corner wasn't dry, and I made a bunch of tire ruts and almost got stuck a couple times around there. I had to, this is the only way I can come back out. On the other side of the house is too narrow, so I had to come back through here and tore this all up in here, and it just got really out of control, this whole area. So I just told my guy that was with me at the time to just oversee the whole yard rather than walking around trying to hand sprinkle all this stuff. It was just so much. I was like, you know what, it'd just be faster if you just take the spreader and just do the whole thing all over again. Like, so we didn't do the other side of the house over here because I didn't even mow that. We trimmed a whole bunch, whatever I couldn't mow. I basically stopped mowing like at one point, and then we just trimmed a whole ton, and I was like, yeah, I can't do this anymore. But the whole rest of this area we just spread with the spreader. So basically we overseeded almost the entire yard. I'd say 90% of the yard, because just a slim area, just a small area on the other side that's really narrow in between the two houses. Half of that's theirs and half of it's their neighbors. So 90% of the yard we overseeded after it was already aerated and seeded and was looking like this. But because I'm assuming it was being overwatered, he was watering it twice a day, which isn't the end of the world, but you know, you want your seed to grow, which it did, but this just got so saturated and muddy, and I just didn't expect it. I had no idea. I've never had that problem the whole year. I mean, it's been a dry year, but I've had this yard for years. I've never had that issue. Sometimes it's a little wet in some spots, and I can anticipate that, but this was a whole nother story. It has never been that bad. So I contacted the client, you know, and I told them the situation. I said, hey, you know, I tore up your yard. It was super muddy. I had no idea it was that wet. I'm not sure how much you have the sprinklers on. You might be overwatering it from a standpoint of having to come back and mow it. I mean, it's good for the first couple of weeks to get the seed germinating and the new grass growing, but you have to dial that back when it's time for us to come back and start mowing, so we can actually, like, we couldn't even walk on it to trim it. That's how bad it was, without sinking and leaving footprints, mud prints everywhere, just with our boots. So, you know, he said, you know, he apologized. He said he was going to adjust the sprinklers and all that, you know, the sprinkler settings going forward. But I told him that we just overseeded the whole thing. You know, he said, all right, well, I'll keep the settings the way they are for now, but like in a week, once I start seeing the new grass seed grow, I'll dial it back so that, you know, it'll hopefully harden up a little bit and you can come back out and mow it. So this is a couple weeks later, and now it's pretty dry everywhere. And the grass is obviously tall, which I knew was going to happen, but you got to do what you got to do. So here we are like a month later. I just wanted to make it right for the client, you know, do the right thing. Obviously, I didn't charge them for that. You know, we had the seed, so yes, there's a cost to the seed, but it's not like we used a ton of seed. But, you know, we had to do what we had to do to make it right for the client. So I'm going to go ahead and knock this yard out now and get back to square one, I guess. So I don't make too many of those kinds of mistakes. You know, that was, I wouldn't say expensive as far as like I lost money. Like, I mean, as far as I had to pay money, I mean, I used a little bit of seed, which obviously cost something, but in the grand scheme of things, it wasn't that much seed that I used compared to what I've gotten paid to use. But the bottom line is, I hadn't mowed, you know, I've gone like over a month without mowing, except for that one time in between where I tore it all up and then had to put seed back down and start all over again. So the big thing is, I lost money by not being able to maintain this property because, one, they overwatered it, and two, I just didn't, I didn't expect it to be like that, and I just tore it up. But I went ahead and I made it right. And sometimes that happens, crazy stuff like that happens, and you just gotta do what you gotta do, whether you do it or an employee does it or both or whatever. You just gotta make it right for your clients. And at least this way, at least I don't lose the client. I'd rather lose a month of mowing revenue skipping after they got it aerated and seeded than mowing, messing it all up, seeding it again, and then skipping several weeks again. So like I said, about a month revenue in mowing that I didn't get from this property, but I made things right. And it is what it is. I don't often make mistakes like that, but it was kind of one of those unpredictable mistakes too. Just really snuck up on me. So, but I could have stopped after that and just said, wait, let me walk the whole property and double check. But I just assumed, because the back end is in the sun also, like, oh, that'll be fine. And it was just a mess everywhere. I was just totally thrown off and kind of frustrated, to be honest. But it is what it is. So it's fixed, it's taken care of. You would never know the difference. The lawn looks lush and beautiful, and that's what it's all about. I still have the client, and I will continue maintaining it weekly from here on out, and hopefully for years to come.